Hi everyone, my name is Miss Taylor. I am your Teen Services Librarian for Little Dixie Regional Libraries, and this is our first week of our Cursive class. We are doing this class in person at our Moberly Library every Wednesday afternoon, but if you aren't able to make it in, or if you want to review some of the things we went over in class, then you can watch this video. We have handouts available every single week at the library that you can follow along with. Everything that we're going to go over today is on here, plus some extra bonus exercises to get a little more practice in. So before we get started, a couple things about writing in cursive. When you are writing in cursive, you do not pick up your pen until the end of the word. You can see on my cursive here, I started writing here and I did not stop until I got all the way to the end of the E. So we want to make sure that for all of our words that we write today, that we are not picking up our pen until the very, very end. You also will find it a lot easier to write if your paper is at a slant. It's hard to show you with my board, but here is our practice sheets. You want to have it at almost like a 45-degree angle as you're writing, and that's going to make it a lot easier, make your writing a lot neater. Because think about it, when you're writing, you're not really writing like this, like this, like this. Your arm is a little more at an angle as you're going. So that'll match what your arm is doing naturally. I know it's hard to see in the video, but trust me, it works. So now that we know a little bit more about how we're going to write in cursive, let's go ahead and get some practice in with our first week, which is our wave letters. Let me clear us some room here. Woo. For our first week, our wave letters, we are going to spend most of our time making this kind of shape. Like that. So what we do, this is the wave shape from our wave week. This is how we're going to start all of our letters this week. So we will start at our bottom line, go up with a nice little curve to our midline, then curve down a little bit, that's the very tip of your wave, and then trace back over that shape, and then about halfway through, you're going to branch off to make the bottom of your wave. Then that's going to become your tail to go into your next one. So go ahead and take some time to practice making that shape, practice connecting them together. I like to do batches of about 5. That's what's going to be on your practice sheet. And you want to practice just getting that nice and consistent and warming up our hands a little bit. Go ahead and practice that. I'll meet you back here in a second to start our letter forms. Okay, now that we've practiced our shapes a little bit for this week, let's go ahead and start learning our actual letters. So I have my lines up here now. You'll hear me say this a couple different times as we go through our weeks together. When I say the bottom line, I mean this red line here. This is where the bottom of your letters are always going to be. Your midline is going to be this dashed letter in the middle, or this dashed line in the middle. Your top line is this top blue one. If you have one of our practice sheets, when these all stack up together, you'll have another blue line. Here, I can draw one for us. Another blue line right down here before your next line of letters starts. And that is going to be where your letters that go below your red line are going to end. I don't think, let me look at my letters. Oh, we do have a couple this week that we'll need to know that for. If you don't have our practice sheets, you just have regular paper at home, you can draw these lines yourself or use any lined notebook paper to practice along with us. And just use one line for your top line, your middle line, and for your bottom line so that you can kind of keep track. So this would be 2 lines of your notebook paper, if that makes sense. Let's go ahead and get into our letters though. Our first letter for the week is the easiest cursive letter to make, in my opinion, and that is the C. And the amazing thing about the C is that you have been doing it this entire time already. For a capital letter, our capital C, we're going to start a little bit below our top line here and curve up just like you would for a print C and then bring it all the way down, and we're going to end with our tail a little bit over here. That's so that this line can connect into the next letter whenever we're writing. So that is our capital C, as I said, the easiest one. Our lowercase c is a little more complicated, but like I said, you've been doing it already. You're a pro at it. So we're going to start right here at our bottom line and go up into our wave, and then bring that back down and curve that over. That is your lowercase c, easy peasy. As we're going through, keep in mind that when you're writing your lowercase letters, this line over here, this, like the start of our wave, that is what connects to the letter right before it. And then this tail on the other end, that's what connects to the letter right after it. So that's why those lines are there whenever we're practicing our letters. Go ahead and practice your uppercase and lowercase c a few more times. You can pause the video here while you practice, and then I will meet you in a second to do our next letter form. Okay, for our second letter this week, we're doing what's probably the second easiest letter, which is an A. For our uppercase A, it's going to look a lot like your print lowercase a. So we're going to start just below the top line, just like we did for our C, and then we're going to curve to the left, go up to the top, and then come back down to the bottom and finish with a tail. So we'll start just below the top line, curve around like this, kiss that bottom line, go up to where we started from. My aim's off a little bit, that's okay. And go all the way back down this line and leave a nice little curve on the end there. Ooh, mine looks a little wonky. There, that's a nicer one. It's hard to do this on the lines sometimes. That is your uppercase A. Your lowercase a, this will shock you, it's going to be almost exactly the same. So we are going to make our wave. Starting at our bottom here, we will go into our wave up at the top and come down, and instead of going into a tail, we're going to go all the way back up to our midline and then come straight back down to make our tail like that. Mine are very straight up and down. You should probably have yours at more of a slant, more of an angle, and if you're having your paper at a slant, that will help and make that happen a little more naturally. Yeah, you can see down here, it's a little more slanted, a little more natural than me trying to go slow on the line for you. And go ahead and practice your A's. You want them to look more like these little ones than these big ones. I will meet you in a second to go to our next letter. We're getting a little more interesting with our next letter. Our third letter for this week is a D. So for a capital D, we are going to start right up here at the top, right on the top line, come down at kind of a slant through our middle line. Then when we get to this bottom line, you want to start curving and make a nice little loop here, and then come back down. It's almost like a roller coaster. Come back down here, and we'll make our great big loop for our D. And then when you get back up to the top here, I went back to where I started from, but then instead of stopping there, I put a little flourish on the end here. So it should just be one big motion with a tiny loop at the bottom and another loop at the top. So again, starting up at our top line, coming down at a slant, a little loop here at the bottom, and a great big curve, and then a loop up at the top. Ooh, I like that one. You'll notice my one up here is maybe a little too skinny. It looks a little cramped. This one down here has a lot of room to breathe. That's what you want. Let's go ahead and go on to our lowercase form for our D. That is going to look very, very much like its print counterpart. So we will start at the bottom of our row here on our bottom line and make our wave, of course. Then when we come back out, we're going to go up like we did for the A, but go all the way to that top line. Then retrace your way back down. And then instead of going to the very bottom, you want to split off and make a little loop, a little hook into your next letter. Just like that. That you can see why we keep our paper at a slant, because I'm writing at a slant. All right, go ahead and practice this letter for a few minutes, and then I will meet you for our fourth letter. We are flying through, you guys. For our fourth letter this week, this is one of my favorite ones for our capital letter. We're going to do our G's. Our capital G is very fun. So it's going to start right down here, just a little bit above your bottom line, so that we can make basically a big fish hook up. Big fish hook up, and when we get to the top here, we're going to do another loop like we did at the bottom of our D. And we will take that loop and we're going to bring it over and pause right at our top line there. Remember, you're not going to take your pen off of the paper. I'm doing it because I'm showing you what to do. So now that we are stopped here at the top line, we're going to make another great big fish hook, a great big J, all the way to our bottom line here. Just like that. You want to cross over your first line over to here. And then just to finish it off, we're going to give it a little bitty tail, just like when you cross a G, like when you write it in print. So that is your capital G. There it is in one big motion. Ooh, I went a little high on that one. Let me try again. There we go, that's a little better. It's very satisfying to write. It's one of my favorites. Let's go ahead and do our lowercase g. It's very simple. We'll make our wave motion to start with. We'll come up and we'll make kind of like we did for our A. Then come down, we're gonna go past our bottom line and then make a teardrop shape down here. And then you wanna cross over right at that bottom line where your like long stick of your G touches the bottom line. You want everything to be crossing over in the same spot. Then you'll just go ahead and leave this tail over here to connect to your next letter. So go ahead and practice your G's for a second. We have 2 more letters left. Our next one I think is one of our weirdest letters, and then we're going to end on something nice and easy. So I will see you in a second. Okay, our penultimate letter for this week is going to be our Q. And capital Q's look very strange in cursive. They take a little while to get used to. It took me a really long time to get used to. But let's go ahead and learn it together now. So we are going to start around a little bit above where your midline is, somewhere over in this region. We are going to, basically we're making a big 2. So we're going to go up with a nice curve up to the very top and come down almost like we're going to make an O. Then over here, instead of going all the way up, we're going to make a tiny loop here and then finish it off. So that is our capital Q. If it helps you understand kind of what's going on here, this is your print Q. And instead of having to take your pen off, what we're doing is basically pretending that part's not there and then just drawing the line without picking up our pen. That's why it looks like that. Let me draw a prettier one down here. Yeah, that looks a little more Q-ish. When it looks more rounded, it looks more like a Q. But all right, let's go ahead and learn our lowercase. Our lowercase is very similar to our G, but it's just going to be backwards. So for our Q, we're going to start on our bottom line, go up to our midline with our wave, go back up to our midline like our A, come back past our bottom line, but this time instead of going over for a teardrop, we're going to go to the right side, almost like you're making a B. You're going to bring that loop up to meet your bottom line here, and then just draw a nice little tail over. So you're almost making an arrow with the bottom line. There is your Q. I'm very partial to the Q. I have a Q in my last name. So that is almost all of our letters for this week. We have one more to learn. I'll let you practice this for a few minutes, and then I will see you for our last letter. Okay, I promised we'd finish on an easy one, and I keep my promises. So let's learn our O's. For our capital O, we are going to start at the top and just make a great big O. Then when you get back up to the top, instead of finishing like this, that's a print O. We want to make it fancy. So instead of leaving it like this, we're going to make one last little loop at the top so that it can have a nice little tail coming off. So that is our capital O. Very easy to make. And the lowercase o is exactly the same. So we will start with our wave, because remember that wave is where our letter right before it connects into it. So we will go in with our wave. And then when we get up to the top here, we will go ahead and add a nice little loop there at the end. Easy peasy. So those are all of our letters that we're learning this week. Go ahead and practice your O and go back to any ones that you feel maybe a little iffy on. Maybe watch that part of the video again, and then we're going to get into putting some of these together and start writing some words and some names. Okay, now that we have all of our letters, let's go in and start practicing putting them together. If you have one of our practice sheets from this week, this whole bottom section here will let you practice putting them together one at a time. So like CA, CG, OQ, a whole bunch of weird letter combinations we don't normally use. But we're going to go ahead and practice today with some words. So my practice sheet broke. On the second page of your practice sheet, there are a whole bunch of different words and names for you to practice. We're just going to do a couple of the words. We're going to do all of the names because they're a little weirder. But for our first word, it is the most important word you have learned this week, and that is dog. So, that reminds me, when we are starting our words with our lowercase letters, you don't always have to do that first part of the letter like we've learned, the part that connects to the one right before it. So for example, with dog, that's how we learned how to write the D, right? But I don't think we need that first part because D starts the word. So we are going to just not do that first part of the wave, do that part of the wave. We're just going to start right at the tip of the wave and come back down and make our D like this. You can do that for all of the wave letters. Some of the other letter forms that we're going to learn, it gets really messy to try to not do that first part. For the ones this week, you can just skip that first part of the wave. Let's go ahead and do dog together. So D, remember I skipped my first part of the wave. I started right there at the top of the D, or right there at the top of the O part of the D, curved around and went all the way up to the top, then back down. Now I'm going to go into the wave of the O, and the O is a little weird. Whenever we connect with our O, we're not going to come back down here and then go into our wave. Oh, it's a little messy. What we're going to do instead is make a little half wave. So we're going to just go ahead and go into the wave from right up here and then go in and make the rest of our G. And that can be a little messy to get used to, but I believe in you guys. You got this. One of the other good words from this week to practice with is cocoa, another delicious word. I guess dogs aren't delicious. I shouldn't say that. Ooh. Anyway, let's go ahead and practice our cocoa. So C going into that O. Remember, I'm going to just do a tiny little wave at the top. Go back down, and then do a big full wave into our second O, and then a tiny wave into our A here at the end. There we go. Ooh, my letters got smaller and smaller. That's not good. You want to practice for consistency. But there are a whole lot more words on here that you can practice, and it's good if you can come up with some words of your own to practice with too. But let's go ahead and move on to our names for this week. I don't think there's any other weird ones, are there? No, I think you guys can do all of these. You're smart cookies. All right, let's go ahead and do our first name for this week. That is going to be Ada, A-D-A. So we'll make our capital A first. Great big A, all the way back up to the top and back down into the wave of our D, and then up to the top again and back down into the wave of our A. Ooh, that does not look very pretty. Let me try that again. That's a little nicer. The slant of your D and the slant of your A should be about the same angle. See how mine look like they're going to intersect somewhere up here. I don't want them to ever intersect. So that's something to practice as you're going through. And that is our first name for the week. Let me clear the board and we will move on to our next name. Okay, our second name this week is a really cool name from Wales. The name is Caddick, which is C-A-D-D-O-C, all letters from this week. So we'll start with our capital C. There we go. Into the wave of our A. Notice my C connects straight in. I'm not taking a break there. Straight into the A, then into the wave of the D, and then into the second D. These letters are so tall, my goodness. Into our wave of our O, and then our half wave for our C here at the end. And that is Caddick. There we go. I find doing a lot of wave letters right next to each other is very satisfying. I hope you're enjoying it too. Okay, let's get ready for our next name. Our third name for this week has a sneak preview of next week's letters. It's very hard to find names that only have the 6 letters from this week in them. So we're gonna have a little bit from next week too. And that's gonna start with this name, which is Daoud. Daoud is an Arabic name, and it is spelled D-A-O-U-D. So our U is our surprise letter, and it is written just, oop, that's way too tall. There we go. It's written like this. We'll get more into depth next week, but to write it this week, I'll show you when we get there. But first things first, our capital D. We start at our top and slant down, make our little loop at the bottom, our great big loop for our D, and then another loop to finish it up at the top. D is one of those letters I do not want to connect because it's finishing up here and I'm starting my writing down here, so it looks weird if you try to connect it. So now I can start my A without my wave at the front. I'm just gonna go ahead and make that like this. Then go into my wave for my O, and then we get to our surprise letter. So for my U, it's gonna be just like you do it in print. I'm gonna do a tiny spike right here, then come down and make a big, like, swoop for the U shape, then come down and go out into my next letter. We'll go into our D here. There you go. That is Daoud. Ooh, my writing went on an adventure. I need lines to write in a straight line, apparently. All right, let me clear the board. We'll go to our next name. Okay, we just have 3 names left. Our next one is Giada, which is an Italian name, which is spelled G-I-A-D. So that I is a new one for us this week. but it's super easy. It's written just like you would think. You're gonna start at the bottom, make a straight line up to your midline, and then end with a little hook right there. And then at the end of your word, that's when you dot your I. So let's get some practice in with that, and we'll get into it a little more in depth next week. But to start with, remember for our G, we start at our bottom here. We're going to make a tiny hook, go up, and loop over at the top, spike here, and then make a big hook down like this, and put a little worm on the hook at the end. So that is our G. Then going into the rest of our name here, we have our I. So starting at the bottom here, we're going to make a spike up at our midline, come back down, and then we'll go into the wave for our A, our D, and our A. Ooh, that is so tall compared to this tiny little part of the letter. Let me try writing that again. And my letters get smaller as we go. My goodness. All right. Our G, A, D, A. That's a little better. You can see I'm very dramatic with my capital letters. Our next name has another preview letter for next week in it, which is our T. It's a lot like our I, just really tall. You're going to start at the bottom, then a little hook, go all the way up to the top, and go all the way to the bottom, and then at the end of the name, that is when you're going to cross your T. But let's practice with that. Now our next two names, our last two names for this week, I've tried my best with my pronunciation. I might be getting them a little wrong, so I apologize. This one is, for our O, is Otota, which is a Tonga name. It's from Polynesia, and it is spelled O-T-O-O-T-A, so we'll get lots of O practice. Let's start with our capital O. So starting at the top line, making a great big O, and then just adding a little flourish at the end there. Then we will go in with our T's. So I'm going to start at the bottom for my T, go up to the top, and then come down and go into my wave for my O, and then a short wave, a tiny wave to go into our second O, and then we're going to go straight up for our T and come down into our last A here. Now that we finish, we can go back and cross our T's. So that is Otota. Bloop, just like that. One more for this week. This name is a Vietnamese name. It's Quoc. It's spelled Q-U-O-C, and I'm positive I'm mispronouncing it, so I apologize. But let's go ahead and practice writing it down. So we are going to start with our capital Q. Remember, the capital Q is a little weird. We'll start right around at our midline and then go up and then go down. And instead of finishing our circle, we're going to add a little loop at the bottom so it kind of looks like a 2. There is our Q. Now that we have our capital Q, we're going to go ahead and make the rest of our name here. Remember, since Q finishes at the bottom, we can go ahead and connect it into our next letter, which is going to be our U. So to connect in our U, we're going to go up with our first spike of our U, and then we will come down for our second spike, and then we will come down, and then we can go into the wave for our O, and then a tiny wave for our C. I know that U is a little bit different. We're gonna go over it more next week, I promise. So that is our Quoc for our last name for this week. Great work this week, you guys. That's all that we have for our first week of our cursive class. You can come back next week for our next batch of letters, which will be our spike letters. We got a little bit of a preview, but there's a few more to learn. But to get some more practice for this week, you can pick up one of our practice sheets here at the Moberly Library. This has everything we went over today, plus some more practice for you, or just keep practicing on your own on whatever paper or surface you have around, except, don't write on the walls. That would be weird. But thank you so much. I am Miss Taylor from Little Dixie Regional Libraries. I will see you next week.